What's going on, guys? My class, how are you doing today? It's a beautiful day. I got some nice light coming in from my room. Keep me shining, keep me smiling. I know it's tough being inside all the time, but there's ways that we can keep it going. We can exercise, we can work out, we can read a lot of books, and we are actually going to be reading chapter 2 today from Who Was Frederick Douglass. Before we start, what is your favorite book? I want to know what your favorite book is. I want to know why you like reading it. When did you first read it? And have we read it before? Maybe I've read it. Maybe somebody else in class has read it. I think we all know that Sam loves his Dogman books. I know we know Jeremiah loves his science. And so there's certain things that I know you guys like, but let me know what your favorite book is. My favorite book of all time, when I was a little kid, I used to read Goosebumps all the time, R.L. Stein. They were really cool. They kind of scared me a little bit, but they were so much fun. When I got to high school, there was a book called Hoops. It was a story about a young man who was playing basketball, and he was trying to go to high school and play on a team and also go to college. And now, as an adult, my favorite book that I've ever read is called Mistakes Were Made, But Not By Me. I'm going to put a link to all those books below in the video so you can take a look at them and you can see them. Maybe there's something that you want to read and check out in the future. All right, so let's get started. We're reading from chapter 2 of Who Was Frederick Douglass, and we're going to start with Baltimore. Baltimore is a city in Maryland. All right, so here we go. At the White House, Frederick ran errands for Miss Lucretia, Captain Anthony's daughter. Sometimes when Frederick was especially hungry, he would stand beneath Miss Lucretia's window and sing. Look at that. Frederick is singing outside and Lucretia's looking out through the window. But was he supposed to do that? We'll find out. Turn the page. Miss Lucretia often rewarded him with a piece of bread. This small act of kindness was like a sunbeam in the young slave's life. Frederick had been at the White House for about 2 years when Miss Lucretia and her husband, Thomas Auld, sent Frederick off to Baltimore, Maryland. Frederick would live with Thomas's brother, Hugh Auld, and his wife, Sophia. It would be Frederick's job to run errands and look after the couple's 2-year-old son, Tommy. Frederick was thrilled. He was only 8, but he was bright and curious. He had always wondered about life in the big city. If you guys have been to Baltimore before, raise your hand. Oh, am I the only one raising my hand? Probably because I had a head start. I lived in Washington, D.C., and I actually lived in Maryland. Where I lived in Maryland is called Hyattsville, Maryland. It's right outside of D.C., but it's only about 30 minutes from Baltimore. So I used to go to Baltimore every now and then, and I had a couple of friends that went to college in Baltimore. It's a pretty big city, pretty nice city. All right, take a look at the top. Before leaving, Frederick spent the better part of 3 days in the creek, scrubbing. Miss Lucretia gave him his first pair of trousers. Wow, Miss Lucretia was pretty nice to Frederick. It wasn't always like this for slaves, but sometimes there were people that were nice to them. So let's look at this map. Pennsylvania, we know that state, right? That state is home to where Mr. Hunter's family is. See that place? It's called Philadelphia. Shout out to Philadelphia, or the nickname for Philadelphia is Philly. All right, then you have West Virginia. You have Washington, D.C., you have Maryland, and there you have Baltimore. And there's also Virginia. So all these places are really close by each other. All right, let's turn the page. Oh, I'm hearing somebody tell me right now, I didn't say New Jersey. I'm sorry, Jeremiah. I didn't say New Jersey. And yeah, Delaware is right there too. All right, turn the page. On a Saturday morning, Frederick boarded a boat at the White House wharf, hoping never to see the plantation again. He wanted to get away from there so bad, right? Slaves weren't really liked at that place, so he wanted some new experiences, hopefully some freedom. On page 23, it says, for a boy who had always lived in the country, the city of Baltimore was overwhelming. With more than 60,000 residents, Baltimore was one of the largest cities in the United States. Tall brick buildings shut out the sky. Delivery wagons crowded the busy streets as they headed to and from the harbor. The sun beat down on the hard brick pavements, also almost blistering Frederick's bare feet. So Frederick wasn't used to that. He was used to walking on the grass and the dirt. And now he's walking on the cement, on the hard ground. And when the sun shines on the ground, it gets really hot. And Frederick wasn't used to that. So it took a lot of getting used to. All right, turn the page. Page 24. A ship's hand brought Frederick to his new home. A ship hand is a person that works on a ship, not their actual hand. The Auld family met Frederick at the door, and Frederick loved little Tommy at once. and he was surprised by the kind look on Sophia Auld's face. Miss Auld had never owned a slave, and she treated Frederick more like a son. For the first time in his life, Frederick slept in a bed with covers. He had good bread to eat and clean clothes to wear. Looking at page 25. He also discovered there were such things as books. He asked his mistress to teach him to read, and she did. In no time, Frederick had learned the alphabet and could spell short words. Proud of his progress, Sophia told her husband about it. Hugh Auld's response was swift and sure. He forbade his wife to teach Frederick any more. Not only was it against the law, he said, but an education would make a slave want to escape. So everybody see that? The wife, Miss Sophia, she was willing to help. She wanted Frederick to learn to read. But the husband, Mr. Hugh, he said, no, if a slave learns how to read, they're going to learn that this isn't right, and they're going to be able to leave and escape and go away. So the one thing that you should take from this lesson, your mind is really powerful. If you know information, you'll be able to help yourself out. The slaves didn't know, and that's how the slavery kept going on for so long. The people who owned the slaves wanted to keep them away from learning. They couldn't read books. They couldn't do anything in school. They didn't even let them obviously sleep together. They had to sleep in bad situations, like we talked about in our last chapter. So there's a lot to learn, and we're going to keep learning as we turn the page here. All right, keep going. Page 26. Mr. Auld was right. Frederick understood that knowledge was power. I'm going to say that again. Frederick Douglass understood that knowledge was power. From that moment, Frederick said, I understood the pathway from slavery to freedom. And from then on, whenever Frederick ran an errand, he carried a book and pieces of bread. He would do this errand quickly and then find a hungry white boy in the streets and trade bread for a lesson. Wow, that's really smart. When Frederick was 12, he bought his first book with 50 cents. He had earned shining shoes in the street. The Columbian Orator was filled with speeches by famous people. One was a discussion between a master and a slave, in which the slave stated the many reasons why slavery was wrong. The slave's points were so strong, the master unexpectedly set him free. And Frederick read this speech over and over. For him, however, freedom seemed to be forever out of reach. So he read that speech about a slave who wrote, slavery is wrong, and the slave owner set him free. Do you think that encouraged Frederick Douglass, or you think that kept him scared? It encouraged him. He wanted to do more. All right, turn the page. We got a long chapter, but we're almost done. At the Auld house, Frederick began to hear the word abolition. Abolition. We got to look it up, all right? You want to know what abolition means?